Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Clayton.
And my name is James. How are you, Clates?
I'm doing good. 3 days out. I'm excited. Are you excited? Draft all set?
I'm excited for Monday.
Yeah, I bet
That's,
you
that's,
are.
that's just
I'm
that's just,
excited for Saturday
it's
more
just
than
a
Friday, to
personal
be honest.
opinion. It's like, oh, Leicester in so much trouble. What a great opening game we've got. Probably by 8:15. I'm like, what is this? Probably season feels like it's ruined early. It's different for me at the moment because I'm not touching my team, am I? Because I've got the
Of
four
course.
Tottenham in there. So it, in a weird way, it's stopping me from tinkering. I did a lot on Saturday and Sunday, and I may well do tomorrow night, but I'm not going to touch it till then, basically. Anyway, we're not talking about our drafts today. We'll cover that on Friday, the two of us and Suj as well, and intended plans. What we're talking about today, off the back of the shortlist and chip strategy podcast already done this week, is captaincy and rotation. We're going to lead with obviously the captaincy side of that, and then we'll look at a few of suggested rotations later in the podcast. But the captaincy debate is really important in terms of trying to ascertain what we want to put in our team because we all want to put Haaland, Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, Foden, Isak, Watkins all in the team. Dom 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 Solanke as well, maybe. But we can't do that. And I think looking at captaincy over the start of the season is quite important. Many of you will have heard me reference that in relation to Mo Salah. My message to people on Salah is, and if people want to pick Salah, of course, that's great. Just look at the captaincy. So we're going to have a look at game week, specifically the opening 10, and then a little bit of a summary of the period sort of 11 to 19 before a second wild card period. But primarily we want to look at the start, and I don't think it's worth going too far ahead further than say 10. One, because I think a lot of people will wild card in that period. I think that's going to be the majority. And two, that happened with Cole Palmer last year. We've got a breakout player, although I don't think anyone was considering for captaincy probably till the second half of the season. But who knows? We might get a new signing joins the league in the next couple of weeks who's a big premium player, and that changes. Maybe someone like Osimhen has been linked with Chelsea overnight, might come in, might be their number 9, might become a serious asset potentially. Let's start with game week 1 first, Clates.
Before we get
Uh,
into it, it's interesting what you said, actually. Like, I've had Salah in all of my drafts so far, no Haaland. And then I went to prep for this pod and I looked at the captaincy 1 to 10. I was like, oh, damn. I don't think there's many weeks I'm going to be captaining Salah. So that's my personal opinion. So we'll see as we go week by week if that kind of adds up and we agree.
it's worth saying, in fact, before we do the captaincy, it's worth saying, and it's often a pushback, right? Is well, it's Mo Salah. I don't have to captain him. I can have Salah and Haaland. And
Yeah.
of course you can. Of course you can. But actually, before we do game week 1, I'm going to talk a couple of numbers because you certainly would have heard me mention the number that I can't get out of my head loads of times. Watkins and Isak is only 2.5 million more than just Haaland. But to flip that, if you intend to captain Haaland the majority of the weeks, you've got Haaland at 7.5 twice. Therefore, he is cheaper by 2.5 million than Isak and Watkins, rather than them two being more expensive. We've all got 12 players every week. You've got one player twice. We all have got 12 players. So if I intended to captain Haaland at least kind of minimum 4 out of 5, and I think he probably needs to be near that level at a 15 million price, I've got him at 7.5 twice every week, which is cheaper than a combination of Isak and Watkins.
I like the logic there. I believe that's what the cool kids call bromaths.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't know what the cool kids are saying because I'm too old. You perhaps are not and still down with these people. But another number that I think is really important to mention is the number 36. Now, me and Suj discussed this, and you might not. We have 100 million budget, right? We've all got the same choices, same 15 players to pick, but we don't have 100 million. We have 36 million because 64 million of that is forced.
Uh,
Yeah, it's forced.
yeah. Okay.
64. If you picked two goalkeepers at 4, five defenders at 4.0, and all your midfielders and attackers at 4.5, that equals 64. You've got 36 million effective is your money to spend. So if you then think of that and equate that to Haaland and Salah, Salah therefore costs 8 million. 4.5 to 12.5, because 4.5 you're forced to spend. So 12.5 Salah costs you 8 million. Haaland obviously therefore costs you from 4.5 to 15, even more, right?
Yep.
10 and a half. So the two of those players, if you put them both in your team, it's 18.5 million of your available 36 million to spend. That is over half your team.
Yeah. That's a really interesting way of looking at it. I'd never thought of it that way.
Now, of course, within that, you are going to probably pick a 4.0 goalkeeper, a 4.0 defender, maybe a midfielder or a forward at 4.5. So it's not that you've only got 17.5 million left for your remaining 13 players, but it's probably what's left for maybe, say, 9 to 10, maybe even 10 to 11, depending on how you're setting up. Some people be all of it because they'll want to look at rotations, as we're going to cover later in this podcast. So that's now when you look at that, Haaland and Salah is over half your budget. It's big, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess this season more than any, I feel like there's a lot more budget facilitating options that I've seen a lot of drafts with Haaland and Salah where I look at it and I think, oh, that actually looks all right, to be fair.
So we've spoken about, say, the Salah Jota, the saving on Jota. And I know people's reluctance with Jota because of his injury record and obviously more of a minutes risk longer term than Salah as well. So we say Jota at 7.5, Salah at 12.5. But if I say Jota at 3 million and Salah at 8 million, how does that change in your mindset?
Yeah, it's a tougher call, I think.
It's still Jota, isn't it? For
Yeah,
me
but
personally.
yeah, that's a very interesting thought process that I hadn't considered.
So that's not so now it would be Salah in your mind is 5 million more than Jota. Actually, when you break that down to your effective available spend, Salah is more than double Jota's price.
Yeah,
He's nearly 3 times.
yeah,
That's
makes sense.
interesting. Game week one captaincy. There's a few options. I think that's fairly clear. Who do you intend to captain game week one, Kate?
Isaac, as it stands, with Bukayo Saka vice captain.
Yeah, Isak for me, subject to any concerns in terms of team news over the next couple of days, but there is clear alternatives. You'd make a case that of all the weeks that we're going to look at, there's arguably the most options are in game week one. You've obviously got Salah at Ipswich. Haaland is always an option, frankly. Away to Chelsea. You've got Saka, as you said, or an alternative Arsenal. And you've got Sonny at Leicester as well. So game week one's got a lot of alternative options. So I think my initial reaction, Haaland in at 15, priced like really fairly, finally at like, okay, it's a decision for people to make. And then going, we'll look at Salah's fixtures. Because I think that was the instinct before you deep dive was Salah's fixtures are amazing in the first seven. And that still stands correct, right?
Yeah.
And those of us who are probably going to go without, there's every chance he kills us. We're aware of that. But then also going, well, I think Isak's best in game week one. So game week one's quite open. And from that mindset, it did make me think, I want to take Haaland on. That was my initial reaction to the price on top of obviously knowing the fixtures. Because when the fixtures came out, I thought, well, Isak's best. Then the pricing came out and it just doubled down my opinion on that, basically.
Yeah,
And
and
that's not changed.
I was similar to be honest. Mine wasn't I want to take Haaland on. It was more I said this last week when we did the debriefs. I was putting together drafts without Haaland and I just preferred the team that I had without really looking in detail on who I'm going to captain where. And it's only been the last few days where I'm actually looking at who do I actually want to captain each week that I landed on it and I've kind of reverted back to Haaland in my team and going without Salah now. So yeah, but game week one is yeah, like you said, there's so many different options. How would you actually rank them, in your opinion, out of the different ones you've mentioned?
Of the five, I think
Yeah.
it was only five I'd mentioned, wasn't it? I think it Isak, Salah, Saka for me, that order.
Okay. So should we do a little fun experiment? I've got FPL Reviews free model open on my screen.
Oh,
And
Stato.
yeah, I know. So yeah, so
I
for
don't know
what
why I'm acting like I didn't know you was going to do this. I do know.
yeah. I don't know why I phrased it like you
But
didn't
I
know. I
don't
was
I
gonna
don't know what numbers you're going to tell me.
No, so for what it's worth, this is the free model, and I've not adjusted any of the expected minutes. So just taking it face value for what's presented in front of me. So filtered by game week one, it's got Mo Salah in first, 6.8 predicted points. Bukayo Saka in second, 6.7. Isak third, 6.5. Haaland fourth, 6.2. And Martin Odegaard fifth at
Okay,
6.
that's
So
interesting.
it's got Bruno Fernandes and then Son after that, which covers the 5 options you
Yeah,
mentioned.
I imagine there's a little bit of an impact there on expected goals for Arsenal this weekend being at home versus Tottenham being away,
That
for
and
example.
yeah, that like I said, I haven't tweaked any minutes either, so not
I,
everyone's
I just
expecting
don't
minutes
think
there.
you wouldn't pick Odegaard over Saka for captaincy. I don't think
Nah,
we,
no chance.
Adam Pritchard said on what was it called? That 20 podcast thing I did last week, correspondent week, said on episode one, he was like, yeah, if he's got two legs, he'll play. And he's had good minutes in the last two friendlies. There's no doubt there, is there?
No,
No.
no.
That's interesting. It's the same top three as my instinct, just a different order. And I
Yep,
think that's fine. Like Salah this weekend away to Ipswich, I'm not going to tell anyone. No, absolutely not. It's interesting. Haaland's not in the top three, and that was my instinct as well. That doesn't happen again for a little while, but there's a couple of weeks where it probably does happen. I think one of those teams, not City, one of the other four, I think one of those four is going to go batshit this weekend.
same. And that's why I think it's Newcastle, which is
I
what I'm
agree.
leaning. Isaac, is
I
that
think I
so?
think that's the most likely to go batshit and win like 5-1, for example.
Yeah, same. So it's interesting because I actually had Saka captain this week, and then it was as I was asking myself, okay, if I roll the dice 100 times, who's most likely to go and score that 5 goals? I think it's Newcastle.
Yeah, agreed. They won 5-1 the opening day last year, and that was against Villa.
Good memory.
Now,
Forgot about that.
admittedly, Southampton will not play on the halfway line, I imagine, like Villa did. And Southampton probably are going to play a back five this weekend. But I just think they've got too much at St James as well. It's not one of them as well where, oh, it's Southampton at home. The atmosphere might take a bit of a dip. It's game one.
Yeah,
The Geordies going to be right up for it. And it's a great atmosphere up there. Yeah, I think Newcastle might be the highest scorers this weekend.
me too.
So yeah, Isak is my personal favourite choice. But there's five good options in my opinion this weekend for captaincy. So not a definitive. Oh, we've got to have Holland at the start. Now game week 2 feels a little bit different.
Yeah,
Um,
slightly.
I mean, I don't know how you would. I don't know how you would have Haaland and not captain him in that fixture at home to Ipswich.
I'm considering triple captaining him in that, to be
I
honest.
Have you listened to Ship Strategy Pod?
I have, and that's what made me think of it.
Oh God, you're gonna blame me, aren't you? I will remember Haaland's home debut, home to Bournemouth, same situation, game week 2, only an assist.
Yeah,
But I think what pushes that as the best single game week option for Haaland is expected minutes. He's not got a Champions League fixture before or afterwards. He hasn't got any fixture before or afterwards. So you do put Haaland's expected minutes, I imagine, really high next week. Unless he was to get injured this week, you're going to expect him to get close to 90. He's ahead
yeah.
of everybody else in terms of preseason fitness as well. If he comes on off early, he's probably because he's done some damage. Could you imagine if they're 3-0 up and he hasn't scored? I don't think he's
Yeah,
coming off. I
he's
don't think
not
he's coming
coming
off
off.
in that fixture. That's the point.
No
Yeah.
chance. For people that are intending to take on Haaland and won't own him for game week 2, who else would you throw into the ring?
I mean, ordinarily, Salah at home to Brentford is brilliant, right? So
Mhm.
definitely, and again, this was part of my early thoughts. Can I take it on with Salah in the first two? The answer is definitely, of course, yes, you can. I think then the third option, you're scraping a little bit, is possibly Sonny at home to Everton,
Yeah,
possibly. But that's a straight shootout, Haaland versus Salah, really, with Arsenal going to Villa, Newcastle away, Chelsea away. I think you don't need to overthink that. It's Haaland versus Salah, isn't it? To be
yeah,
honest, if you were to have an alternative to those two, it's probably something like Jota
yeah.
rather than Son against Everton. It's probably still within the same two teams. See, I think Haaland comfortably on two. What's review got for him in two? It's got to
Ah,
be high.
9.1.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then Salah's second in 6.4, joint with De Bruyne, 6.4.
That's quite a difference between Haaland and Salah on,
That's
yeah.
massive, yeah.
It's because of Haaland's ability to potentially, I think, particularly in any home game, just go crazy.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's a promoted team. It's at home. It's, yeah, no need to overthink that one if you own them.
yeah, I mean, that's the scariest one. Of all these in the first 10, the scariest one not to have will be Haaland in game week 2.
Yeah. And
I think
I'll
that's
be
clear.
lying. Yeah. I think that was probably a consideration in me bottling it and getting him in as well, to be honest.
Yeah, game week 3 is another one that's quite open. Um, Salah goes to Manchester United, and I'd probably discount that from the captaincy. And by the way, this is the idiot who discounted it that time he got the hat trick at Old Trafford
Same.
and literally said on the podcast on the Friday, it's not like you'll go to Old Trafford and get a hat trick. Literally what I said. And that's exactly what he did. Properly destroyed me. That was the same weekend as the Kai Havertz against Norwich.
It was, yeah.
And they won 7-0 and he didn't get
Yeah.
nothing.
I went for Havertz that
Uh,
weekend as well.
Sometimes, guys, it's the process, it's not the outcome. I didn't realize Manchester United would be that bad, but actually, United under Ten Hag against Liverpool been good.
Yeah.
A win, an FA Cup win in extra time, and a draw. Admittedly, Liverpool scored goals in those games, and so too has Mo Salah. I want to say he scored in all of them, actually.
Yeah, that's what I feel like he's done as well.
I'm pretty sure he has scored in all three of those fixtures.
It's worth saying that obviously United have strengthened at the back with a couple of additions as well, so they might be a different
We think
outfit.
Luke Shaw is going to miss the start of the season, but obviously Delit and Matsuraoui have been brought in, so you could see. I think by the time you get to game week 3, those two playing with Martinez and Dallo,
Yeah.
one of Dallo or Matsuraoui would be left back. I actually quite like the idea of Dallo at left back
Same.
because I think he's very comfortable coming into midfield.
Yeah, he's very good on the
Um,
ball.
so I think he might actually be fine for United in that position. So I think yes, that's stronger. But it did. I wouldn't say game week 3 is not like Ipswich at home for Haaland. There are options here. So Haaland away to West Ham feels like the sort of game that I'd probably like to take him on.
Same.
I have a basic rule with him that if I've got him, if he's at home, it's don't overthink it. There is a case for fixtures like Arsenal where you do so, obviously, if someone else has got a great fixture, and we'll cover that in a second. Away from home, anything away from sort of the bottom 6 or 7, you can have the debate. These are the times where maybe I can take him on. And West Ham away does feel like that sort of fixture. I think the problem is there isn't anything else that's that outstanding. Isak against Tottenham, I would include, considering scored 10 in the last 2 home games against us, and chances will be there.
Yeah.
Palmer's got Palace at home, which if Palace lost Gay and Anderson over the next couple of weeks, might suddenly look like a different fixture and might be one you feel comfortable with. This is obviously FPL's highest scorer last year, so I wouldn't discount that. Saka at home to Brighton. Again, no, we might get a little bit more of a resolute Brighton this season. They might well go quite defensive when they play yourselves, Clayton, and we won't. I don't think we'll have any prep to know what that looks like,
Yeah.
considering the first 2 fixtures they've got. Ollie Watkins at Leicester, which obviously is the start of Villa's really good run from game week 3 as well. So there's multiple options there. Therefore, default to safest, which would normally be Haaland or Salah. And I think between them two, it's definitely Haaland in 3.
Interesting. So you'd go Haaland over Saka in game week 3 based on those options you listed
Yeah,
out,
I
yeah?
think from that lot, if I was to top 3 it, I'd probably, if you pinned me now, I'd probably be something like Haaland, Saka. I'd actually say Isak.
Yeah, I
Just
think
St. James's against us would get chances.
I would agree with that, to be honest. I'd probably, obviously, I'm an Arsenal fan as well, but I'd still probably go Haaland,
But
then Saka.
I,
But
I wouldn't have thought the models would have Isak in the top 3.
no, so that's what I was
I'd
just going to say.
imagine Watkins would be, I think, actually.
Interesting. So, game week 3, it's got Saka top 6.4, Haaland's
Okay.
second 6.1, joint with Palmer 6.1, then Foden and Tony on 5.6. Behind them is Ollie Watkins with 5. Ivan Tony.
The interesting bit with Saka there is, and obviously game week 3, and we're obviously just looking at this as standalone week. Obviously, with the Villa, Tottenham, Man City away games either side, if you're going to carry him through, considering the capability of others at the same price, you probably do want some justification. And if you think he's the best captaincy in game week 3, that will give you some
Yeah,
that might convince those who start with him to go with him, or even there will certainly be a crowd that wildcard in game week 3 as well. But with the 2 after Tottenham and Man City away, which we know he can return in, he scored at Tottenham last year. But it is off-putting when you do look at a
of
fixture
course.
schedule.
Yeah.
And at the moment, because we've got no data for the season, you can only really look at the fixtures, I feel, because teams will change. But a team like Arsenal has not. I mean, your starting 11, I'm going to guess, is going to be only players who were there last season. Have I got that wrong? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Probably.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
Unless Calafiori started,
Yeah,
but we don't
which I
expect
don't
that.
think he will.
So you could look at more like Arsenal data wise, more than I think you could look at, say, Liverpool, even though they've got a similar side, but the manager's different.
Yeah.
Chelsea obviously overhauled players. West Ham got a new manager. You could look at someone like Arsenal. You could look more at their data. I think. Even something like Tottenham, just having Solanke in the middle now is going to be a difference potentially for other players. I think though, if you've got doubt going into that, Haaland in 3 for me. I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
I'd be the same right now.
model says Saka, and so then again, Salah's got a great fixture in 4. Forest at home. I'll take it on again.
Well, remember
Sit,
back in the day, that would be a no-brainer, wouldn't it?
course, absolutely. But Haaland's got Brentford at home.
And that's also a no-brainer.
And actually, I think if Tom Med and Mark Southerns were both sitting here right now, I think they would both say Captain Haaland. And that's the respective Forest and Brentford correspondents. Brentford defensively is just not that's right in pre-season, still missing Henry and Hickey. They might be back by that stage. They may have new additions because this is after the transfer window. But if those two fixtures were this weekend, if Haaland was at home to Brentford and Salah was at home to Forest and it was this weekend, Haaland would be getting the armband.
Yep. Yep.
Same.
Agree.
I'm gonna guess review's not going to argue with that.
No, review is not arguing. There's an interesting third shout in there for Eze, 5.9 in game week 4, but I think most people would own either
Okay, yeah.
Haaland or Salah.
Leicester at home. I think under that circumstance, I arguably maybe still prefer Watkins against Everton, maybe
Yeah.
as a different alternative. Yeah, but again, you're not really going to argue with that. Now, game week 5 is interesting. And this is for me, it's the 1 week where I think Salah's best out of the first 10. And it's Bournemouth at home. It's another decent fixture. It's not better than his two fixtures against Forest and Brentford, in my opinion. But Bournemouth at home is a good fixture for Mo Salah. It's not like we've ever had the circumstance where they won a game 9-0 and he's not returned in it. That did happen against Bournemouth quite incredibly. It's one of my favourite ever fantasy memories, that.
Oh, it's not one of mine.
Because I didn't own him.
Yeah. I owned it and I captained him in that.
I was at a boat lake up Alexandra Palace and saw the score was 5-0 at half time. I was like, oh my God, how dead am I? And I think I'd had Robertson and Trent at the back and they were both doing bits and stuff as well. 9-0 and he never even got an attack in return. Incredible.
FPL Folk Club.
Yes, it is. But I think Salah's best in that one, but it is a home game for Haaland. But it is against yourselves, Clates. It's against Arsenal.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, like, again, small sample size, but the couple of games that Arsenal have played against City recently, Haaland doesn't really get a sniff. I think Arsenal have improved a lot. Defense. A sniff is harsh, but
Well,
he's not.
there's two ways of looking at this. One, they never scored against you last season.
Yeah,
It was only one. It was only one goal across the two games, and that was a deflected shot from distance, right? So both of those games probably should have finished 0-0, really.
Yeah.
But the season before, they beat you 3-1 and 4-1, and he scored in both.
Yeah.
So listen, if City are going to score goals, Haaland's going to score goals. That's the reality here. And you would imagine there was so much on that game last season at the Etihad. It probably won't be quite like that this time. I
Yeah,
certainly
especially in
think
that period.
Arsenal might set up the same and go, yeah, City away. Let's sit behind it a bit and take the point. And I wouldn't discredit you from doing that. But I think because it's earlier in the season, I think City would take more of a chance.
Yeah, probably. What do you reckon review has for that?
I think Salah.
Only just, 5.7 with Haaland 5.6. And then it's very split. There's Son at 5.5 and then Watkins 5.3 for that week.
Yeah, that's the other two I would have listed. Is
it?
Son at home to Brentford and Watkins at home to Wolves. Yeah, would have been the alternatives. I think it's interesting at this point, considering I want to captain Isak in one. And I do think he's an option in game week 3 at home to Tottenham. But for me, probably not a consideration for any of them away games against Bournemouth, Wolves, and Fulham. And he doesn't have to be, particularly at 8.5.
Especially at his value, yeah.
But it's interesting that his name hasn't come up. And Watkins' name's starting to come up now for the first 3 of his good run. That's interesting, that. If we move on to game week 6, I think this is another one that you would certainly be keen to potentially take Haaland on, particularly with Newcastle having Nick Pope back. And again, it might be settled. It might have a new centre back in by that stage. But I think Newcastle will be much better defensively this year. Haaland goes to Newcastle in game week 6. This is the sort of fixture we look at and go, yes, I can take him on. Particularly when there's a good fixture for Mo again. I mean, Wolves away is fine. It's not brilliant, but it's fine. You'd be comfortable putting the armband on Mo. But it's not Mo again. I don't think this is Saka again, isn't it? Home to Leicester.
That's a Saka one for me as well.
Yeah, the other alternative might be Palmer at home to Brighton, maybe. And again, Watkins away to Ipswich in 6 as well. So another mention for Watkins. Those would be the The 5, I would have thought in game week 6, Manchester United and Tottenham play each other. Obviously, Isak plays City. We haven't mentioned Manchester United at all, by the way,
Oh, we haven't.
at this stage, despite their fixture list not being too bad. But I think that's more down to lack of trust in their options for captaincy.
Yeah.
Um, I do think there'll be a stage this year where Garnacho is a player that people might talk about on certain weeks for captaincy, but
Really?
I don't think that I think he'll go up a level again. I think, but I don't think that's a decision for right now. You'd probably still go Fernandes if you had to
Well, and his
back to
name,
United player.
as I'm filtering week on week, his name is always like just on the outside of sixth, seventh option. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. I think that in 6 would be. It's not Salah though. Despite wanting to take Haaland on, it would be Saka. If I was sitting there without Saka and I had Haaland as my option there, it'd probably be Haaland. I have a feeling that me personally might end up with Captain Ollie Watkins that week at Ipswich.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Don't hate that.
It's a sort of one, definitely. Newcastle way, you feel like you could take it on.
Yeah, 100. I agree with you as well. I think Newcastle defensively will go up again this year. Well,
So,
return to what they were.
interestingly, we said at the top, and I think you and I are both leaning into the idea. I probably won't be starting with Haaland, but I'll wild card in
Yeah.
2 and then he'll go in. So effective, I would start with him. If I'm not bench boosting, he'll go in. I've said about wanting to captain in 4 out of 5, but in the first 6, we're saying he's only best for half.
Yeah. I
And
think,
if you specifically intended to wildcard in game week 7, and I think some might do that because fixtures come back around for City again, obviously at that point, there's a case that you'd put like, because you could definitely put a team together that's got Salah, Saka, and Isak in, and that'd cover you really, wouldn't it? Basically,
yeah, it would,
in terms
especially
of
based,
alternatives to
of course.
Haaland.
I think to be honest, like my thinking isn't so binary. So I think one thing was obviously, like I said, about the captaincy and game week 2 against Ipswich. But I think the other thing is I historically start seasons pretty badly. So I like the idea of having the most expensive asset in the game there, bank the best captaincy probably available game week 2, and then reassess game. I always like to try roller transfer, get to game week 3, reassess, and then I don't. Okay, am I really going to move off Haaland game week 3 against West Ham before they go Brentford? Probably not, but I've got the option there should I need it to kind of move funds around.
Well, consider this for something as well, and this is a really scary number for those who would intend to go without Haaland and think that they may get swayed to have him in game week 2. You basically won't be able to get him unless it's for a -8.
Ah, that is a scary thought.
Think about it from a numbers perspective, right? What's the next price forward? Watkins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it really? Is that the biggest jump?
It
Jesus.
is. It's Haaland to
Yeah.
Watkins, isn't it? 15
Wow.
to 9, right? So it's a 6 million difference. So let's just say you started with Watkins. Okay, sell Watkins, you get Haaland in. You need to find 6 million, right? There's only 2 players you can do that from, Salah
No.
and Palmer.
Yep.
So what you're going to do, start with Palmer for Man City and then sell him for Chelsea's good run, or what you're going to start with Salah and what he's got Brentford at home and sell him to a 4.5 million midfielder. You're actually making your team worse as well.
Yeah.
Well, to Salah, you could do it to a 6.5, I guess, or a 5.5. So 6.5 or lower. So the only way to get Haaland for less than a -8 in game week 2 would be to physically sell Watkins and Salah or Palmer.
Yeah, and like you said, that's
Otherwise,
potential.
it's a -8 or a
Yeah.
wild card.
Unless people are able to actually roll the transfers, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I think that there's a number of people who go without Haaland may end up wildcarding in game week 2
Yeah, I can see that.
because of that.
FOMO will creep in as well.
Oh, I've got all these transfers I can roll. I was going to roll till game week 6 or 7, keep rolling, and now I'm game week 2, and I'm like, shit, I'm looking at a -8. What's happened to me? Oh, bollocks! I'll pull the trigger. I can see that.
Yeah.
Play it your way, always, guys. It's just to make you aware the cost to get him in. Game week 7 has said City come back into a great run. So Haaland's at home to Fulham. There are good alternatives. Saka again, home to Southampton. Cole Palmer, best week so far, I think. Nottingham Forest at home. Salah at Palace. He's fine. It's reasonable. But if you think the big man's going to play at home to Fulham, it's that, isn't it? And I think again, best alternative rather than Salah would be Saka or or Palmer in this case.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because I would no-brainer go Haaland here, but reviews got Saka just edging him by 7.5 to 7.3.
Sorry, say that again.
I would go Haaland as well, but FPL reviews got Saka just edging him.
Wow. Even though
Yeah,
Haaland's got Fulham at home.
yeah, and like I said at the start, I haven't adjusted any expected minutes, so I think as the later we're looking out here, I think that probably plays a part in.
What have they got for the two players on expected minutes on that week? And
So it should.
I'm guessing I'm not someone that's that familiar with reviews, so excuse me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess here that the expected minutes go down a little bit because of the prospect of injury and suspension as the season goes on. If you're
You're
doing it
right.
from now,
You're right, they do go down. I'm not too well versed with review either, so I don't know the reason why. That would make sense though. But they've got Saka 84 and Haaland 77 come
okay.
game week 7.
Will also as well, not that Haaland's injury prone, but Saka always plays, doesn't he?
Yeah,
So okay, that's interesting. Game week 8. Haaland away to Wolves is a borderline one where you think if there's a good option elsewhere, I'd really like to look at it. Problem is, arguably the two most powerful assets are then playing each other in Salah and Palmer, Liverpool against Chelsea at Anfield. Saka goes to Bournemouth. That's a little bit more tricky. And although Newcastle, Tottenham, and Manchester United are all at home, none of them are massive standouts. Probably United at home to Brentford might be the best of that. Newcastle play Brighton, Tottenham play West Ham. Um, I think from the rest of that, it's probably still be Salah against Chelsea because it's at home.
interesting. So this is one where review has got a lot of different options. You've mentioned a couple of them already. Haaland is first, but then it's got Bruno Fernandes in second at 5.6, and then it goes Saka, Son, Foden, Salah, Isaac in that order.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see a little bit of a split in that week, but it does feel like one if for Haaland owners, there's not enough there to fight it. I don't think personally. Game week 9, just jump over Haaland at home to Southampton.
Yeah,
Basically, I
next.
think to be honest, the best alternatives that I think in that week, I'm interested to see what reviews say. I've got Watkins at home to Bournemouth, and I've actually got Boomo at home to Ipswich as the best alternatives in game week 9. Arsenal, Liverpool play each other. Chelsea and Newcastle play each other. Tottenham, Manchester United both away.
Yeah, you're not far off. It's yeah, Haaland standout. It's actually got Tony ahead of Bumo, but
I understand that.
Bumo is in the list, and then Palmer and Watkins, and then Saka.
Okay, I'm so Palmer at home to Newcastle. Yeah, sure. In 10, everyone's kind of got a rough fixture basically, except Manchester City and Liverpool. Arsenal go to Newcastle, Tottenham play Aston Villa, and Manchester United play Chelsea. So of the top 8, if you will, or expected top 8, 6 of them are involved in games against each other. Liverpool and City are the 2 that are not. They meet in game week 13. So it's Salah at home to Brighton, Haaland away to Bournemouth. I think the answer there probably is dependent on Brighton.
Yeah, and what, like you said, do we get that resolute defense that we're expecting or not?
I'd say that's close at the moment.
I think that's very close.
I
Yeah,
think if my instinct would be probably Josh Salah, maybe. I think if those two fixtures were this weekend in game week 1, I think I'd be going Haaland
okay.
because of the unknown on Brighton at this stage. Whereas Bournemouth got a couple of problems defensively, obviously lost Solanke at this minute, and we do know they'll strengthen. At this minute, a little bit weaker, so it'd probably still be Haaland.
Yeah, agree with that.
So if that's the case, Salah 1 out of 10. But I think in any case, 10 is debatable. I think it's 1 out of 9 at least
Yeah,
on Mo Salah.
and it's interesting because even though you've thrown out some really interesting alternatives to Haaland, there's just a couple of fixtures in there where you're just like, yeah, next plum fixture at home, and yeah, I'm very confident that I'm gonna go with him now.
What's the takeaways from that first 10 on captaincy?
I think I'm finding the start of this season more refreshing than previous years. I don't think there is a template per se. I think there are different options to go with if you want them. So, say the last few years, it's literally, I know we've spoken about Haaland being the captain in the majority of them, but we've never had, well, I say never. In the last couple of seasons, I don't think we've had as many alternatives that we can credibly discuss like we've done there. What about you? What do you think it is?
Um, I think there needs to be, as ever it'll be, you got to do this or you can't do this. I remember making with the case I have on Salah now. I remember people were quite vociferous with me, actually, because I intended to go against Bruno Fernandes when he came in at either the same price or 12. And he'd had that sort of 244-point season or something the year before in the COVID year, Hernandez. And but you can't go without him. Blah, blah, blah. But my point was it was similar. And I think at that, it was something I looked at like the first 13 weeks or something. And I had Bruno as best option in one for captaincy. And again, particularly if you're going to captain Haaland every week and Salah's your competitor, then of course you can do that. Haaland almost justifies having Salah more because well, I'm captain Haaland every week. But I can't you can't escape that number of the 18.5 out of 36.
No.
For me, it's just so big. But I'd also say, I think specifically for people who might have identified they want a wild card in game week 7, there is a real case to take Haaland on, but you need one big mudder sofa for game weeks 2 and 4.
Indeed.
But Salah does have great fixtures in 2 and 4.
He does. Yeah, you
Like
can do it,
you'd be
but
well comfortable captaining Salah at home to Brentford and Forest, wouldn't you?
in isolation, sure,
Yeah,
ignoring what the big guy is up
but you can
against.
take him on.
You can,
I would
yeah.
bet you now that Salah will outscore Haaland in one of them weeks.
Possibly. Yeah, yeah. Especially like the one against Forest, I think that's closer than the one where yeah, so game week 4, Salah's against Forest, Haaland's against Brentford. I think that's closer than Haaland against Ipswich and Salah against Brentford.
Don't know. Have you watched Brentford in pre-season?
No, I haven't to be fair. So I'm taking your
No,
word
neither
for
have I. But
it. But every
it's quite clear they're a little bit shaky at the moment.
yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Um, you can certainly take Haaland on in free. We mentioned there's kind of a number of players that you could potentially go against. And so I think there's a specific. If you were going to wildcard in game week 7, there is a strong case to say you'd be really happy, or maybe not happy, comfortable to take Haaland on in 4 of the first 6 weeks. And then because of Haaland's price, you should probably go without. But game week 2,
That's the thing. It's the ceiling of what's possible in 2 or 3 of those weeks. I think that you add in to the grouping of 10.
Mo is the most consistent player we've ever seen in FPL.
Guaranteed points in his words.
Guaranteed points. Yes, we've all seen the video, I'm sure. And a few people probably put him back in their team after seeing that video. It's like, he's the same every year. He's like, yeah, pick me. I'll be the highest scorer and stuff like that. But actually, Mo, you weren't last year, were you? There was a few did outscore you last year. That's feel ridiculous to say, probably going against Mo Salah. For me, on what I'm planning to do, yeah, I'm not starting with Haaland. But he'll be there in 2. I ain't taking a -8 and put him in. Wild card and put him in. Okay. Just before we do rotation, just a little bit of a summary. We're not going to show you, for those watching on YouTube, graphic. I don't think it's worthwhile, but you can look at it yourselves, I'm sure. The reason I'm not going to do it in too much detail is the short of it is, yeah, you need Haaland. 11 to 19. I think he's best for 7 of that period and actually extends into sort of roundabouts game week 22, where I think the next 3, I think Haaland are all best as well. There is a massive 5-game week period in sort of February, March time where he really can be taken on, I think, in a consecutive period of sort of 4 or 5 weeks. The other interesting thing, though, is in the weeks that I would take Haaland on in basically the period of sort of November and December, twice I think Tottenham are best. And once I think it's Newcastle. So in game week 11, I mean, this is a debate in itself. Haaland's got Brighton away, Tottenham have got Ipswich at home. So that's not a bad one for Haaland, is it?
No.
So it probably depends on how you feel about Brighton, Haaland, and Tottenham come that stage. Game week 13, Haaland goes to Liverpool. So I think that's one you really do want to take him on. But the alternatives aren't great. The top 3 I've got are Tottenham at home to Fulham, Manchester United at home to Everton, and Brentford at home to Leicester.
I like Tottenham at home to Fulham that week. I think if that was this week, I'd probably chance that instead of Haaland at Anfield. You're not
Tottenham,
keen?
Tottenham Fulham doesn't scream out to me like the sort of fixture that Tottenham are ever going to go mad in.
No. But I don't think Haaland will go mad against Liverpool.
the other one to put into the case of that is obviously just Salah at home to City. Unfortunately, Cancelo won't be playing left back anymore. I shouldn't imagine though. And the other week, I think I'd be keen to take Haaland on. They go to Aston Villa in game week 17, so that's a sort of away game. You are keen to take him on, with the caveat that that Villa high line is always quite scary if you are going to take Haaland on. I think best that week is probably Isak away to Ipswich. You've got Palmer at Everton, Saka at Palace, Tottenham and Liverpool play each other.
Yeah,
So
like
over
you said.
that period, it's never Salah. In fact, in the weeks of 11 to 19, I'd have Salah as in the top two best options only three times and never first.
Wow. Yeah, this is a new thing for us. I can't remember ever kind of speaking of him like that as not just auto
It's
captain
the same
or
thing.
one of the
It's like
vice.
when he's got a good one. So, for example, game week 17, Fulham at home, Haaland's got United at home. Right. I'm still quite happy to go Haaland. That might be different by the time we get there and we think stronger about United. Game week 19, Salah's got Leicester at home. Blinded. Haaland's still got Everton at home. He's not the sort of one that if you've got him, you want to argue against.
No. You said there's a stretch between, I think it's like game week 23 to 28, right? Where Haaland's not top. Yeah. Are there
Yeah,
good alternatives in those periods
yeah, I
or?
mean, look, it doesn't matter too much now because you're gonna have second wild card into play. Everyone's gonna wild card before then, stuff like that. But yeah, just to sort of highlight a 6 game stretch between 23 and 28, Haaland over that period has Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, Newcastle at home, Liverpool at home, Tottenham away, and I actually included Nottingham Forest away as well because that week Salah has Southampton at home.
Wow.
So that one feels like more because it's away and Salah's got a plum home fixture. Yeah, okay, Salah. I've got Salah best for three of them,
Okay.
which are Ipswich at home, Wolves at home, Southampton at home.
Yeah, that's a nice three, that.
It's worth saying, obviously, in 26, City and Liverpool play each other. 27, Salah's got Newcastle at home. A couple of nice fixtures there for Isak in that period as well. I like him for captaincy in 24 and 26. And actually, Cole Palmer game week 27, Southampton at home as well. That is the only time I would have him as best captaincy option as it stands the whole season.
Wow. Yeah, and of course things will change as we get
Of course
new
it could. Of
information and stuff. But as it
course it
stands,
could.
that's interesting. Yeah.
That's purely because every time Chelsea have a really good fixture, one of the two big boys, Haaland or Salah, has essentially a better one. Or something
Interesting.
you'd be more comfortable, I think, to captain one of them. It's just the way it works out that when Chelsea's really good fixtures are, Haaland or Salah have normally got a great fixture as well. So that 23 to 28 is maybe something next year where there's a real period where you take Haaland on. But even that, Salah only best for half of those 6. But Salah, Isak, Palmer, you could certainly do it and really take him on. But that's ages away. I think the November December period would look quite scary without Haaland. Arguably even more so than this start.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at your spreadsheet is just a sea of blue in that first row.
Um, let's talk some rotation options. So Clayton said to me yesterday, he said, "How do you want to do this?" And I said, "I'll tell you what, rather than doing like an A to W, and we're not going to go through every team, it takes too long. Let's split the country in half because there's 7 teams in London and there's 3 clubs on the south coast. So we'll do a London and the south, and I'll do everything north of London." And then Clayton sent me back a list of rotations he liked this morning. It didn't include any northern teams. He just literally looked within the southern teams playing each other. But that's okay, Clay. It's because I picked up a few that does include northern and southern teams.
I'm the
So
man that takes things at face value. What can I say?
it's just a few rotations to maybe a few things maybe people might not have considered. Just to look at, say, a couple of 4.5s together or 4.5, 4.0. If we don't mention a rotation here and you really like it, it doesn't mean it's bad. We've just had a look at a few that we like. Here's an unusual one that I quite like is Quansah and Pinnock, Liverpool and Brentford. Now, clearly, even just going down that route, there is a danger. That danger being that Jarell Quansah doesn't keep his place in the Liverpool team. We all think at this moment it will stay in. But I don't think he's going to get a lot of offensive returns. And at 4.5, it could fall into the Esri Konsa category of last year of like, okay, you're playing for a really good team, but you might also concede a few goals and you're 4.5. How interesting are you for me? Like Quantza doesn't scream out as a, for example, if we knew Bradley or Shimikas were going to play every week, you'd pay the extra 0.5, wouldn't you?
100%. Yeah.
And therefore, I still think if you have Quantza and you have weeks like Manchester United away in game week 3 and Arsenal away in game week 9, you will want to look at alternatives to that
Who
sort of
have
thing.
Brentford got in those weeks?
Well, respectively, it's Southampton at home and Ipswich at home.
Okay, that's
So,
nice.
yeah, immediately that draws the attention. Also, 6 and 7. Again, when you start looking at Quants away to Wolves and Quants away to Palace, I'm not sure how much you're going to love that. It's home fixtures for Pinnock in those 2 weeks as well, with West Ham and Wolves. Why am I mentioning Pinnock, by the way? That's just because that's who Tom Med said was the best Brentford defender to start with if you wanted to do so. And then 11, Liverpool have Villa, whilst Brentford have Bournemouth at home. I think
Okay.
that's probably still a Quanza because it's at Anfield, but it's another one that's competitive. And also, very importantly, in 13, with Liverpool playing Man City, that's Brentford again at home to the other promoted team, Leicester.
Yeah,
So, in Liverpool's 3 worst fixtures, Brentford have the 3 promoted teams at home.
that's really nice. And I like the idea of that because I'm not someone that really looks to rotate keepers or anything, but I do like the idea of rotating like a 11th man in my squad. I usually do it between like a midfielder and a third forward or something, but I do like the idea of, especially this year, I feel like there's a lot of good defensive assets. So I do like that as an idea.
The caveat to that is again, if you're looking at something that long, sort of 1 to 13, like are you gonna wild card in that period? I mean, every year I see people tweet and it's like, oh, up till game week 20, you'll always avoid top half teams if you pick these two. That's great and brilliant, but you probably don't need it that long.
No.
Is the reality. Um, I want to pick out one that's later in the season, just because
Okay.
it's one that's very hidden early on. It's actually Manchester United and Chelsea.
What game weeks am I looking at here?
11 to 19. Um, there's a little run here where you can have Leicester at home, Leicester or Ipswich away, take your pick. Everton at home, Southampton away, Forest at home, Brentford at home, Bournemouth at home, Fulham at home, Ipswich away. United, Chelsea. Yeah, but stuff like Martinez and Colwill at 4.5, they're boring picks, aren't they?
Yeah.
But it's also over a period where we know a lot of the top clubs have difficult fixtures. Manchester United, not so much, but Chelsea do. But there is a rotation here that works that would enable you a Chelsea enabler to potentially go over Manchester United enabler if that's the sort of thing you're looking for. One of the longest ones I found also involves 2 teams who both finished in the top 5 last year. Villa and Tottenham. I think he's pretty good actually. If you're a long term planner and don't think you're going to wild card till Boxing Day, which is game week 18, looks basically really good until Villa and Tottenham both play Liverpool and Manchester City respectively in game week 17. So up to game week 16 is pretty good. The worst it would ever look like is when they play each other naturally. Game week 10, which is at Tottenham. Game week 7, Villa play Manchester United at home and Tottenham play Brighton away. That's the worst it will ever look if you go for, say, Concert and Van der Ven.
Over a 16-week period, that is decent.
Yeah, I'll read it to you. So I won't do the homes and aways, but Leicester, Everton, Leicester, Everton. That's your first 4. And it's Leicester away twice and Everton at home twice. Brentford, Ipswich, Man United or Brighton. West Ham at home, Bournemouth at home, Villa, Ipswich at home, Palace at home, Fulham at home, Brentford at home, Southampton at home, Southampton away.
That's decent.
It is pretty good if you wanted
Yeah.
to look at that as a long term. So that's interesting because I would say Conser and Van der Ven as 2 examples would be no consideration for me. The problem I think, particularly if you're considering Van der Ven, is do you want the helter skelter of what I have to suffer every week of watching Tottenham try and defend? Because you're probably going to want Porro in there as well, right?
Well, I
That's the
guess
point.
with Van der Ven, is there the chance with I'm not sure what Udoggy's status is returning from injury, but if Van der Ven plays left back every now and then,
Um, yeah, the closer we get to Monday, the more I think Udogi might start Monday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He certainly wouldn't play the 90, no chance. But they might try and get him because he's done 45 in the friendly. They might get him an hour. And under that circumstance, there's every chance Van der Ven could play left back in the last half hour. But it's just as likely they bring either Ben Davies or Jed Spence on in that
Sure.
position. I think actually Jed Spence would be the more likely. He started left back in the last friendly. But what you would say with Van der Ven and Konsa is they're both certain starters, bar injury.
Yeah.
Not that, so like that Quansah one's a bit dangerous because he could come out the team. That won't happen with Van der Ven or Konsa. Fairly
No.
certain of that. So
And you're right, because in isolation, I probably wouldn't go for either of them. But when you combine it and rotate to get those fixtures, you do. If you say what you get a clean sheet 1 in 3 of those fixtures,
well,
you'd be quite happy with that.
I think what happens quite a lot is you identify someone you like say Mikalenko as an example, and then you go, right, well, okay, let me look at the rotation for him. And I'm going to talk about a decent Mikalenko one in a minute, actually. But I don't think you're drawn to ever look at that with a Tottenham and Villa. I mean, Tottenham and Villa, like for me, Van der Ven and Konsa, my opinion, both pretty shit assets, actually, for
Agree.
this right now. But with that run, and you keep picking the best one, it's not bad. If I think that's one specifically for those who are looking at, say, wild card really late in the late December period, have a look at it.
Yeah.
Have a look at it. I mentioned Mikalenko. I think there's a nice rotation actually with Crystal Palace that goes on for quite a while. Joachim Anderson has been linked, obviously, with a return to Fulham because remember he spent a period there on loan. I did see an interview with Anderson himself earlier this week. We said, "Look, I'm really happy here. We're building good things." Whether his opinion might change if suddenly Gay and Eze are sold as well, and he's well, I'm the last one left. So if you needed to go safer, maybe Chris Richards at this moment. When Palace will play over back three, and I'm pretty comfortable that even if Gay and Anderson both stayed, he'd be in it.
Yeah.
But Anderson has got a bit more capability in terms of BPS and goal returns. But you could have from a Mikalenko Anderson 9 million rotation. Brighton at home, West Ham at home, Bournemouth at home, Leicester at home, Leicester away, Palace at home, Newcastle at home, Ipswich away, Fulham at home, Southampton away, Fulham at home, Brentford at home, Newcastle at home, Wolves at home. So it gets a bit sketchier towards sort of 11,
How many?
12.
I feel like there was 3 away fixtures in that, with the rest at home. Oh,
There are three away fixtures and they're all against promoted teams.
wow, and the rest at home. That's a nice run.
So Everton Palace, you could look at. I mean, that first three, Brighton at home, West Ham at home, Bournemouth at home, it's not that great.
No, it's not as nice as the previous one that you just mentioned, but
Oh, I
it's
do.
Spurs
You
and
do
Villa.
feel with those two teams though that they'd be very capable of keeping clean sheets.
Well, Everton, I've always said, like, I think you said this on another episode as well. Any team to just pull out a clean sheet, kind of make it really tough for the opposition. I back Everton anytime.
Um, Two more I just want to mention briefly. One rotation for the first 10, which is a little bit cheaper, so 8.5. Wout Fass of Leicester, yes, unbelievably, and Murillo at Nottingham Forest.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hear you out on this one. I'm not keen on Leicester, but
Neither is anyone else at the moment. Sam Martin, I appreciated your tweet yesterday, and I wish you well for the season just after game week 1, mate. This is interesting because I'll tell you why this is really interesting. So Fass is 4. I only use Murillo as the example because that's the ultimate safe at the moment. Although maybe some might say Milenkovic, because I guess there's a small possibility Murillo could go. If City turn up with whatever Forest want money wise tomorrow, he goes, doesn't he? There's
yeah,
nothing to
but
say that will happen at the moment, nothing
no,
at all. But
I say that's a small chance.
you could go Milenkovic, you could go Oloreno, I think would be the safer one
Yeah.
to go rather than Nico Williams. But what's really interesting when I looked at the first 10 was I picked Leicester 6 times.
Really? Okay, go on.
And the reason that's amazing is because Forest have a great first 10 fixtures.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I landed on this, but I landed on Forest for the first 3
Yep.
of the Bournemouth, Southampton, Wolves fixtures. And then Fass for all but one of 4 to 10, which starts with Palace away, which isn't great, but I'm certainly picking that over Murillo away to Liverpool. Then Everton at home, Fulham at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, Forest at home, and Ipswich away, with the Fulham home game being the one I'd picked for Murillo.
Yeah, see, this is one of them. I think with like Tottenham and Villa, they're teams where, especially Villa, I look at them and some of those fixtures at home, I'm like, okay, clean sheet. And even Tottenham, like, I still think, even though you give up chances, you'll get clean sheets. Leicester, despite those fixtures, they sound nice on paper. I see teams scoring against Leicester quite frequently.
That's fair enough. But Clayton, some people were very insistent on having Haaland and Mo Salah. This is an extension of the
You are
captaincy.
correct. You are
So,
correct.
what I decided to do as a final task, because I'd ended up picking Leicester quite a bit against Forest, which I just found was bizarre when Forest have a good grouping of fixture. But when I looked at it, I was like, well, Leicester have got Southampton and Morilla's got Palace. Oh, Leicester's got Ipswich and Morilla's got West Ham. Like when I broke that down, I was like, individually, the Leicester ones are better. I decided to look at the three promoted clubs together because you could have the 4.0s from each. And obviously, I'd said to you that I think if I had to pick one now from the promoted clubs, I'd probably now go Ipswich.
You did? Yep.
And that's probably still the case. I'd probably go Ben Johnson because I think the run from game week 3 is good. There's a small possibility he might play wing back if that's the system that they keep. And because I've picked Leicester quite a bit, I wondered how much I'd pick Ipswich. And then I threw Southampton into the bargain as well over the first 10. And I picked Southampton 4 times, Leicester 4 times, and Ipswich only twice.
Ah, interesting.
And I won't read it all out purely because the first fixture out of the three promoted clubs, I'd guess you say best would be Leicester at home to Tottenham. And within game week 1, you go, I don't want to do this.
No, no, thank you.
um, City, Wolves, and Ipswich. Otherwise, I mean, Wolves. There's some good rotations once they hit their good run in game week 10. City, I just think you're never taking that out.
No.
Like if you've
You
got Vardy, he's playing, and he.
you did mention a nice one to me off air, which was Arsenal and Brighton, because I made an assumption that I think people would always opt for the kind of uh defender from an Arsenal and stuff, but you did throw in a nice one in there. Probably worth
Yeah,
reading that one out.
I think most people who start with Saliba and are intending to, or an alternative Arsenal defender, bar David Raya, those who are picking that in the first and not intending to wildcard till say sort of game week 7 onwards are almost definitely putting Barco in as well. Purely because when Arsenal go to Tottenham and Man City in 4 and 5, that's when Barco's got the Ipswich and Nottingham Forest 2 home games.
Yeah.
And you would nearly always I know why you didn't look at it actually, like you'd always pick the Arsenal defense. I agree.
Yeah.
But also with a Saliba, I realise you're great from set pieces. And we saw that again in the friendlies recently. But what if teams are going to have to work harder for it? You probably don't hit quite the set piece numbers you hit last year.
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. But you'll need to, I think.
Of course.
This
Of
is why
course.
we say Saliba and Gabriel go with the centre backs at Arsenal because of the set piece prowess. If it levels out, not so good. If Vardy plays the same position he's been playing for Manchester City towards the end of last season, and by the way, there's no guarantee that he would, but just on the eye, you're not going to want to go without that, I
No,
don't
of
think.
course.
With the Arsenal one, because it's a centre back, you're going, I might want to bench him at Tottenham, Man City. I will throw the caveat in, you know how good Tottenham are at defending set plays, Clates, right? So maybe not the Tottenham one, but it is when Barco's 2 really good fixtures are. And then actually, when Arsenal play Liverpool in 9, Brighton have got Wolves at home. So if you don't like that either, Barco's got another good home fixture there as well, if you're looking a little bit longer term.
Yeah.
So listen, you could still pick Saliba over Barco. I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I'm subject to how well Barco does. The models might still suggest that that's what you should do. But that's a 10 million rotation where you get to bench an asset that you really want in Saliba. You get to bench him a few. Could even make the case Villa away in 2 and Barco home to Manchester United.
Yeah, I think that's closer.
It is, of course it
So.
is. But listen to the Brighton people out there and what they're saying about Barco. I expect him to be winning the Ballon d'Or
I
just ahead
know.
of Matthias Francher at Crystal Palace next year. Francher because of obviously the clause in his contract. Do you want to cover a couple units at Clates?
Yeah, I'll just do one. I think I've seen a lot of people that are looking and considering wildcard quite early on in 6, and there's a Southampton. It's funny you you kind of touched on them earlier in another daisy chain. They've got a nice run that starts, I think, more in game week 2, where they've got Forest, Brentford, Man United. I think will be improved this season in there, Ipswich in there. But I think if you combine them with Brighton, I don't know if you want to take on, not take on, sorry, go with Forest, Brentford, and then Brighton have
Ipswich
well,
Forest.
Ipswich and Forest. Yeah, that could be a nice little run in there. Fulham and Brentford is another one from 2 to 13. That's a really nice stretch. And Fulham defensively, I think they'll be quite good this season. I think Anthony Robinson, 4.5 million. You combine that with someone from one of the other teams in that stretch. I think, yeah, there's a couple of options there, but I think you've covered most of them in detail, to be honest.
Yeah, I think with Brentford are the sort of one that's always going to are going to show up in combinations that are quite good for a number of rotations, purely because the home games have got right. Palace, Southampton, West Ham, Wolves, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Leicester. Then okay, Newcastle, then even Nottingham Forest, right? That's their home games before they play Arsenal, which is either the last game of this year or the first game of next year. I think it's the last game of this year. So that as a cluster of home fixtures is great, right?
Yeah.
You play Flecken in nearly all of them. It's the away games you're not going to be so happy with. Um, it doesn't combine, I don't think, brilliantly with Palace. If you were looking at say the Flecken and the Henderson, I think there's a couple of weeks that you won't like it, but early on you could probably get away with it for a while. But then you hit certain weeks like Palace got United in 5, and then Brentford have got Tottenham away, and it doesn't look so great. Game week 8, it's not too bad. Flecken goes to United, Henderson's at Forest. Yeah, maybe that's better, Flecken and Henderson. If people, I don't think people want to do that. Like I think if people go for Flecken, they'll go to 4.0 Brentford goalkeeper.
Yeah, and I think rotating defenders I understand more than keepers. The keepers one, I think it pisses people off because you always end
Yeah,
up
wrong.
dodging a hole. Yeah, you'll always bench it for the wrong game. The only other one I'm looking at is like I said, I quite like rotating between like a fifth midfielder and a third forward, and Smith Rowe and João Pedro, both 5.5 million, is a little bit more expensive to be looking at a rotation. But like I said, I like Fulham start. Brighton have the nice two fixtures and Ipswich and Forest in there. So that's another one that I'm looking at if I can go Leicester, Ipswich for Smith Rowe, and then Ipswich and Forest for João Pedro. But I'm not sure if that's one that would actually
Yeah, we believe in
be
Smith Rowe
sustained.
out at home to West Ham and beat 5-0 last year
Yeah,
and 2
so
nil away as well.
it's something I'm considering. I've got a feeling I'm going to be giving myself benching headaches this year
I
because,
don't mind that.
yeah,
I don't mind that. Play it your way. Um, I don't mind that. I think it's useful, particularly at the start of the season. People do generally want to be rolling transfers early. The more strength you've got to be able to rotate your team is obviously going to be beneficial. And I know that there's obviously a group of people that would rather just thin that out. There'll definitely be people starting with Barco and you're saying Barco and Harewood Bellis, for example, is
yeah.
he's not too bad of a rotation. I mean, give you an example. You land game week 5, Barco's got Forest at home and Harewood Bellis got Ipswich at home. Make your case. I mean,
I think you probably got Brighton.
well, you go Barco because the offensive stuff, but you know, maybe just by default, and then you go, oh, 4.0 has got a great fixture in game week 5, and you know what you start doing this year when you start seeing that. I wonder if I can
Oh,
bench
should I
boost
bench
in
boost
game
it?
week 5.
Yeah, but there'll be
There are
people.
things there like City playing Arsenal that will put you up it
Yeah.
massively. By the
And
way,
like we've said a couple of times, there are people that are going to be going Haaland and Salah, and to do that, you need your Harwood Bellis, you need your Barco. So that's not a bad way to enable that.
yeah, I don't think we want to bench boost when City and Arsenal are playing each other.
No. Oh, I
So,
meant it's not bad to go for the two 4.0s rather than bench boosting.
aye. Cheers, Clates. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
I enjoyed that. That's not an exhaustive list of rotations. As I said, if we'd not mentioned the one you like, then it doesn't mean it's bad. It's probably good. It's just me and Clayton haven't seen it. And as ever, it is very importantly play it your way, guys. If you do want to start with Mo Salah, by all means, absolutely go for it and do it. Because I'm sure, by the way, that he will do very well at the start of this season.
Agree. We'll be back
And
tomorrow. What have we
we
got lined
will.
up?
So keep an eye out on the Bird app tonight. I will send a tweet out. It's going to be a public first. Me, Clates, and Suj on an FPL Q&A. I suppose Suj would be quizmaster. It probably should be me and you do the answers, really, shouldn't it? I should imagine. And we'll do an extensive one. So we do need your questions tonight. don't ask shit like who the captain in game week one. Like, I've just covered it. So if it's something we've covered in the last 3 days, if you can, try and ask stuff that perhaps we've not covered, you go, oh, I wish they covered that. Those are the sort of questions that we want for that podcast tomorrow. So I'll send a tweet out tonight and we'll cover. That's all the podcast is going to be tomorrow is a Q&A. And then we'll do our intended, subject to team lose, final drafts as early as we can on Friday morning for you as well. We'll definitely intend to get that out for you before lunch.
Lovely stuff.
Cheers, Clates. Thanks very much. Be nice to each other, everyone. Play it your way. Cue music, please, man child.